public venues throughout the United States, including in our area, recording in public spaces, trying to test whether or not anyone has a problem with it. Legally, they are allowed to, in a public building, record video going around. Basically, they're fishing for a reaction from the staff or from the police to either give them cause for a lawsuit or to generate good footage for the internet. So there have been different people going to libraries, town halls, city halls, police stations, and seeing how far they can go with it, legally or illegally as it be. So this was a presentation that was prepared for a municipal conference so that people could be a little bit more aware and try to protect the interests of the town or city that see it. Here in the library, it's a little bit touchy because we are a public building, but we're also considered a limited public forum, which sounds kind of technical, and it is. So we are a public building, but we're a public building that isn't exactly fully public. We do have a dedicated use. So how that interacts with freedom of speech laws is not definitively known. So it's kind of a gray area legally that hasn't been fully tried out in court. So there is a point at which a person's freedom of speech in order to be able to record stops, and a person's protection to be able to use the library begins. Where that line is, we don't know. So most libraries are trying to do their best to walk that down the middle and keep from getting sued while also protecting people using the library. So I just wanted to make you all aware that this is something that's been going on.
Are we getting any direction from the town?
This is the direction we've gotten from the town. It's tough because, like I said, libraries are a different animal, so the direction from the town is basically clearly demarcate what is staff versus non-staff areas. We're working on that. We have signs posted now for areas that are staff only. We don't have anything that cordons off staff from non-staff areas, so there's nothing stopping people from walking behind the desk or behind Linda's desk. So the next thing I'm looking at is whether or not we might get some eye hooks and just screw them in and then have ropes. Even if we leave the ropes unhooked, there is something there that we could hook up if we needed to.
Would a sign be sufficient?
We have signs up now, but the problem is like there's no real good place for us to put the sign because it's open. It was designed for us to be able to easily walk to and fro so that we could help people on the other side of the desk. So we could put a sign right on the end of the desk, but that's still, there's that doorway on that side, so there's no good way to put it without having some kind of like barrier. Especially with Linda's desk, it's really hard because the shelving actually goes behind what she uses as her desk.
Are we definitely going to be visited, or it's just a okay?
It's a possibility. There are libraries in the area that have been visited. Fall River City Hall was visited. The closest library that I know of that has had a visit like this was Somerset. There was another town hall near us that did have a visit too. I think it was Little Compton. But yeah, it was Little Compton and Tiverton. So it just was look at the draw. I think we might have had one at some time in the past, but it was before I came in.
But are these people saying provocative things, or are they just
Some
asking?
do. Some say provocative things. Some try to get up into the staff's face. Some wear clothing with offensive language on it. They're trying to get something that they can use to generate a lawsuit in some cases. It depends on the person. Some of them, I like to give them the benefit of the doubt. I think they're doing it for, free speech reasons. Some of them, I think, are just doing it for the spectacle and for financial gain. So, but this is something that is going on, and it could happen here. So I just wanted to bring it all to your attention a little bit more.
Is our comment just like no comment when they ask questions?
It depends. I mean, basically, the best practice is to treat them just like any other patron that comes in the door. And then most of the time, if there's nothing to really, give them cause to make a deeper situation, they kind of just mosey off.
And are they engaging just with staff or with our patrons as well?
It depends on the person.
Okay.
obviously that's the thing. Once they cross the line and start interfering with a person's usage of the library, technically that is a crime. So if they are impeding other people from utilizing the library, at that point the police could be involved and remove them from the library.
And the person would have to feel that their rights were being impinged on. What if the patron is getting into it with them and they're having some repartee or something? It's just fine.
And that's the thing. So part of the reason for our existence is the free exchange of ideas. So in that situation, technically that would be protected. So that's a slippery slope. But then if that becomes too heated and loud, then that would impede other people from using the library, and then they could both get thrown out. So, but the tough thing is, like, it's a gray area. It's a thing that has not worked its way fully out through the courts. So the best thing is to try to avoid trying to find where that line is as best as we can.
That door shut so they can't come in here?
Technically, the meeting rooms are open spaces.
Only when they're being used though, right?
Right. Yeah.
So if the doors are shut,
Yeah. But technically, it still is a public space because it's used by the public. It's not just a
but
staff.
it's only used by the public when they ask to use it.
When it's reserved.
But it's not considered staff. So that it's, in terms of the way that the law is written, it is a public space. But there's nothing really in here for them to see or interact with, so it wouldn't be a
But
problem.
we
one way or
don't
the other.
open the room to people who want nonprofit groups, with the exception of our story hours.
But when we have
and
like
friends.
exhibitions and things
Yeah.
like that, so it still
Right,
is considered
yeah, that's true, when
a
we do
public
the
space.
paintings
Yeah.
and photos, right.
Nothing.
What if a patron came up and said, I'm offended by that?
It's the same thing like the flags flying in town with the offensive words on them. Technically, there's nothing really we can do.
Okay.
It might be uncouth, but it's like the same thing with, the flag out down on Tottenham Road,
So we better to ignore it.
pretty much. But just so you're aware, like I said, not everything in that handout is applicable directly to libraries. It's mostly designed for town buildings, but just so you're aware, this is something that is going on in the areas. And the other piece of correspondence was Don found a really interesting library article based off of a library in Michigan, I believe, that's having some funding issues due to challenges to the books they have in their collection. So far, they've been able to raise money to offset the amount they've lost in budget cuts, but just it goes into how important libraries are, and what it means to be libraries in this modern day and age we live in. Thank you, Don, for sharing that with the group.
You're welcome.
And that's all I have for correspondence.
What's that?
That's all I have for correspondence.
Okay. How about your report?
So, before you have September 2022. This is the unfinished circulation numbers. We still don't have the out-of-network circulation numbers from the ebooks. But you can see that we definitely do have a little bit of a September dip, which is normal for this time of the year.
Is that because the kids going back to school and stuff?
Just everything. It's a really busy season. Parents, kids are going back to school. We're having to change with the guard between summer folk leaving, seasonal folk still kind of here, but kind of closing down the houses, the students coming back to school. So it's just a kind of a transitional bumper month.
Mm-hmm.
I was really happy to see the 78 new patron registrations, so that still is really high. So I'm glad to see that. We are back to increasing our registered patron count, which, though it's lower than it was, we're making progress there. The thing that I was really impressed and surprised by was the increase in the number of uses and the number of hours used of our public computers. So we only have 4 computers now since we took out the 3 slowest ones. And with only having those 4 computers, we saw a dramatic increase in the amount of time and the amount of uses just those 4 computers had. So the reliable service at a decent speed, it's showing an increase in use. And I ran the average out per use, and each individual use of the public computers is about a half hour. So that was interesting to see how much time people were using them for each time. And I think we had about 125 for the pirate one, I forgot to ask.
Mm,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. The other really neat thing to see was we had more than 50 technology assistance appointments in September. So that's people coming in, either us needing to help them with something on the computers or getting them set up to download and use ebooks. We count both of those as technology assistance, which was a dramatic increase over the last, especially in August. And it was even higher than July, which is usually one of our busier months with all of the summer folk and such. And the thing that really surprised me was the door count, which, did I skip something? No, I didn't, okay. The thing that really surprised me was the door count being 4,800, which I think is mostly partially a result of having the book sale, really driving up the door numbers.
Where's the door count? Am I missing it?
It's the second one from top. So door count for September was 4,836, which as far back as I have numbers, that's the single highest door count we've had since I started here.
That's a great way to do it, have them come in that way and exit this way.
Yeah, it worked really well.
I don't know how they've done it in the past.
That's pretty much the way.
I mean, I don't know if they've always come in this way and exited this way.
But we never had a count.
So in terms of staffing, we've pretty much got the plan for my leave squared away. Like I was talking with everyone else, a couple weeks might be a little touch and go, but the public shouldn't notice too much of a decline in services. Although I like to think they'll be horribly heartbroken that I won't be here. But let's be frank, Linda and the girls are the true draw. I'm just window dressing. But that's fine. I understand.
We don't want the patron staff outraged because you're not here.
No, that's fine. So currently my wife is at 37 weeks, and I honestly have no idea if we're going to make it the next 2 weeks, but we do have contingency plans in place, so even if I have to go out a little bit early, it shouldn't make too much of a difference one way or the other. The ARIS and the financial reports have both been submitted to the MBLC early, which I did a little happy dance. Thank you, Don, for coming over and signing those so quickly and getting them in. Currently, we are on track to receive full accreditation for FY22 with no waivers, which should result in us getting approximately $29,000 in state aid.
Excellent, good.
Great.
Thank you. Which we're very happy to see. We're going to have to wait and see what happens. I always get nervous when we have a change in administration because the governor's office submits the initial numbers for state aid funding to the state house, and then the legislature kicks it around. The current governor has really been consistent in his support for the libraries. It hasn't been, crazy amounts of money, but it's been going up the last 10 years. So anytime a new administration comes in, I don't know what next year is going to look like, but I would assume it probably won't be less than what we're getting right now unless something untoward happens. Fun announcement, we're going to be participating with the New Bedford Whaling Museum and the Westport Historical Society in an oral history project here at the library. We're going to be housing the best way to describe it is kind of like a recording booth where you're going to be able to come in and actually record your recollections of life in Westport in yesteryear. How much it's changed, what is different now compared to 50, 60, 20, 30, however many years ago you'd like to record. I'm actually really hopeful that we might actually be able to outdo New Bedford, because apparently they had this set up in the New Bedford Public Library for a month and they got almost no one. Which, being from New Bedford, didn't really surprise me because there's only so many folk who actually grew up in New Bedford compared to the current population. It's a very high turnover city for residents.
Like a melting pot.
Yeah, which is a good thing. It's great. But in terms of I remember when I was a kid, you couldn't go past County Street without a parent with you because it was too rough down there. And kind of is now too, but that's neither here nor there. So we're really excited about that, and I just got an email after I printed this out that they've actually moved up the delivery date a week, so it'll actually be coming next Friday. And then we're working in collaboration with the Historical Society to kind of raise awareness of it being here, and we're going to be doing press releases the whole 9 yards to try to help preserve as much history of New Bedford and Dartmouth, Westport, the entire southeastern Massachusetts area. It's a really cool initiative that the Whaling Museum's been doing for some time.
Now, there is a group from the Historical Society that was giving presentations at the Point. They met at Pawcatuck Inn at the Point, and people were invited to attend, because there are a lot of people in town who have a lot of knowledge.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And it's one of those things, we've done this before, about 10, 15 years ago, I think, 20 maybe. We do have a collection in the history room of oral histories that were done with the last generation. So I've been talking with the Historical Society about trying to do this since I started here. So we're really happy that this came through, and the Whaling Museum just happened to also be working on it at the same time. And hopefully we'll get some play out of it. So we'll see. Check your emails. They're going to be going out. We're still talking with the Historical Society about whether or not we're going to have a grand opening. I'm not sure if that's going to happen or not. It will depend on some schedules. But we'll see. So that one, we're really excited about that.
Is that going to be available online?
I think so. I haven't checked with the Whaling Museum. I think they're planning to do something with it once the entire collection part is done, but it's going to be a while. I've started working on the FY24 budget based off of our total spending from last year. We will be attempting to get the town to increase their portion of the library's budget. Currently, we're looking at about an 80-20 split between what the town provides and the funding from other sources, which includes direct donations, fundraising from the Friends, state aid, and revenue from fines and fees and the trust funds.
I think the 80 is
The town.
town.
Yep.
Really? Huh.
I didn't think it was
That's
that high.
I
because
was
of the
think-
salary.
It
Oh,
depends on
okay.
the year, and that is true. But usually I went back and I think I looked back 8 years, and depending on the year, it fluctuates. The lowest year was 75-25. Last 2 years ago was the highest, but that was because of COVID, so there was less money going out. That year it went up to, I think it was 87-13 or whatever that works out to. But yeah, about 80-20 is about is close to the average over at least the last 8 or 9 years. My personal goal would be to get the town to fund the entire operating budget, and then we could use all of the other funds for the material collection and for programming, but we're not there yet. In terms of the buildings and the grounds, we went through 4 water coolers in the last month. With each one coming, actually breaking and leaking as well.
Are they new ones that we got?
Theoretically, I was told they were new. I do not know how new they were. I do not know how new the parts in them were. I'm just saying, one started to leak, and we requested a replacement, and they made me jump through hoops, and I was a very not happy cowpoke. And then they brought the replacement, and they left the replacement. They popped the water tank into the replacement. Seemed like it was okay. The next morning we came in and there was water all over the floor. So we called and had another replacement brought. That one, so that's 1, 2, 3. That one came on a Friday when I wasn't working. They hooked it up, popped the water bottle in, I'm told, waited, and it started to leak as well. So
He
pop-
did apologize.
Yep.
He felt bad about it.
Lovely gentleman, I have to say, we got to be very good friends. By the 4th water cooler, which is now still in our staff area, and as of yet, after I think we're at a week, it was doing just fine.
That's great.
But yeah, 4 water coolers in a month. Yep,
They
I
have a
was-
tendency to take them back and rebuild them.
yeah. So
Shortcuts.
Yeah, actually, it was the first water cooler that you got back.
I don't care. The first one we've had for years, it just started to leak randomly. So if they just fixed whatever was wrong with it and brought it back,
It's probably Westport water.
I don't know. Moving on. We have to replace one of our new phones since it wasn't working quite right. We're having a problem with it that it couldn't dial out. So they sent us a new one, and they helped us over the phone to program it, and now it's been working fine, so that's been fantastic. We still do have a little bit of an issue of sometimes we get calls for other town departments, but we've discovered if we don't pick up the phone, they just keep on going to wherever they're supposed to go. So with the caller ID on the phones now, if we just see something going to a different town office, we just don't pick it up. and it keeps on going. Supposedly, they're still working on fixing it all the way, so, but there's that. We pulled the computer from the kids area that we used to use to play games. Since the kids who were using the station couldn't actually operate the computer, we were having some complaints from some parents that the games with a mouse were too difficult for the little kids to use, and they wanted something with a touch screen like Dartmouth does, which those computers cost $5 grand a pop, which we probably won't be getting anytime soon. So when consultation with Linda, we changed that computer station over to a drawing station, and haven't had a complaint since. So the plan right now is I'm going to send that computer to the Sales Library Network headquarters, and they're going to rejigger it so that we can use it as a dedicated public catalog. We've had some complaints from some folks. They don't like having to log onto the computers to search the catalog, or having to ask us to search the catalog for them. They want to be able to search the catalog without having to log in with their library card number, or to talk to us for anonymity purposes. So, okay. So this will be able to set the computer up so that it can only be used for searching the catalog, if they want to. The town has requested we submit our capital improvement requests for the next, the rolling 10-year capital improvement plan. As of now, the only item we have that qualifies is the HVAC replacement, which the requirement as far as the town is concerned is it has to be more than $25,000.
Have you looked at that quote for $25,000?
No, it's not an actual quote, it's a ballpark number, so it's just,
You should have somebody look at it and give us an actual quote.
and that's the thing, we've never gotten to that stage of
Right.
actually getting a
'Cause
quote.
I think I worked with Sue on putting that number together.
Yeah, and that's all that number is. So the rule of thumb for the town is each year to increase it by 3%. So I'll probably put down on the paper whatever 3% of, above 25K is.
Because if we have someone look at it, we should have something put in here for building control so you can do it on a computer instead of, if you tie your alarm system into it, that could be hard, the whole package.
And the other thing too is whenever we put it out to bid, I would really like to look into what we can do to have built-in air purification in it.
Put it in the quote.
Because
We need to get that quoted as part of that.
that's the thing. So right now we're spending about $1,000 to $2,000 a year on all the standalone air filters, and it's just on top of $1,000 for the air filters for the HVAC unit.
That's why I think it's important to, let's relook at that.
And
put
the
it-
technology has really changed a lot since.
Yeah. With all the what do you call it? The black light, air purification, all that kind of stuff. It's a lot.
Just when they redid the school, when they got the extra $400,000 for COVID, to redo the whole air filter system over there after they'd already spent $1 million probably. So, she's right, the technology has changed dramatically.
Definitely.
There's a HVAC company in town called AGS that did mini splits for the, oh my God, the farm thing on Main Road right across from Westport Friends Meeting. I'm blocking on the name. The Grange.
Oh, okay.
But they did it with no labor. They donated their labor.
Oh, wow.
And so they might be a resource if they would do something like that for us.
ABS?
AGS. Always Good Service is what it stands for.
And it gave them some very good press.
Yes, and they're also sponsoring the concert, the rock concert on Saturday to raise money for the food bank. So they're a company that does good things for the town.
That'd be great. So as of right now, basically I think we've got about 2 years. Yeah, so basically when those units were originally installed, they were expected a 15-year life cycle, which that was 2010. So we're looking at, 2 or 3 years before they're at the end.
The older ones are, the original ones are older than that, right? Did we replace all of them when we did the
As far as I
addition?
know, they were all replaced, I think.
I'm not sure that one, I'm not sure that one.
Remember all the HVACs were?
Were they all replaced when we did the addition?
No.
I was gonna say, the one out back has got to
The
be.
one
like-
out back
Or might have been
had to be replaced because it broke.
Yeah.
It quit. But that was before the renovation. And the furnace got stuck in a
Girl Scouts.
snowstorm on a train.
Girl
And
Scouts.
so we were here operating without heat for a week until the Board of Health shut us down.
There are different ages.
There are
of
different
it.
ages, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll sit with you, George, we'll go over and get somebody to come in and talk about what the options are.
Sure. Yeah.
And do we decide, or does somebody else in the town decide?
So there's a capital improvement committee. If we went through the town paying for it, obviously if we wanted to do fundraising, go through the trust funds or through the Friends instead, that would be a different process.
But capital improvement should pay for that.
They should, and
Yeah.
that's the thing, or.
I don't know
if-
how long you have to wait in that line,
I know, well,
because that changes all the time.
That's true.
We
And
should
it always depends.
submit it for what we want.
Yeah, and then obviously the other thing too is if, if they wanted to put X amount, and we wanted to have a different system, then maybe they could do like the differential, like capital improvement will put so much towards it, and then fundraising would cover the rest. That's always a possibility too, but,
I'd ask for the whole thing from the town.
yeah,
and then of course it all has to go out to bid.
yeah, which is the other thing.
But that's okay, we can be very specific in the bid. You usually do that in the school department, you say, I want this, and you have to have 5 people on staff that can handle it, you can work around it.
Yeah. So that's the big thing that we have that might be coming up. That's what I got. Oh,
Okay.
and Don, just so you know, I did price out in the report. At one point, you had asked me how much we had spent on HVAC system and maintenance over the last couple of years, and that's in there too.
So, my story hours began this week. The age 3 to 5s come on Tuesday mornings at 10, and the lap sit, which is designed for under 2, comes on Wednesday morning at 10. And I had 3 little families, all girls, for the lap sit, and they're all 1 year and younger. For the Tuesday morning group, I had 2 girls, 1 3, 1 4. So it's interesting that I have no boys in the story, either program thus far. I've spoken to a couple of other parents this week, and I think we'll have a couple more. And I had one grandmother call and have to cancel the first one on Tuesday because her 2 kids, one was sick, so they didn't come. So it will get a little bit bigger by next week. This is going to happen on Saturday. The fire and ice had to be postponed because of the rain due to the hurricane last weekend. But they're mad science, and they came 2 years, well, not this summer, but the summer before, and they did the rocket ships out in the backyard. So the Friends are sponsoring this, and they're coming back. It says, the events include foggy, dry ice storms and demonstrates how a giant beach ball can float in the air. Students are amazed by sizzling, shivering scissors and special bubbly showers. So that's what's coming. And then on Friday night, the 28th, Mark Binder's coming at 6 o'clock. And it's a family Halloween story program, really designed for the younger age kids, probably kindergarten up, ideally. But he said if there were older brothers and sisters that come, he'd be happy to do one story at the end of the evening that would be scary for the older kids, and the younger kids would be asked to vacate, so just the older kids would stay for that last story. So we'll see what happens with that. And then in December, I have booked Mr. and Mrs. Claus that will attend the Manton Room program, well, this area, on the second Saturday, the 10th of December, from 10:30 to 11:30. And Mrs. Claus will read some stories, and there would be a photo opportunity if parents wanted to take a picture with Santa and Mrs. Claus, or the children wanted to tell Santa what they had on their wish list for Christmas gifts. And we're also going to plan to make some little Christmas ornaments. Probably will encourage them to do 2, so they could put one ornament on the library Christmas tree and one ornament to take home. So that's the plan for December 10th. And the other thing I didn't write down is we're lucky to have Mrs. Strebel, Bonnie's mom, who offered to make 60 kits for us of the, it'll look like a gingerbread house, but on a smaller scale because it will be graham crackers. But they'll get the graham crackers in a package, they'll get the candy all sealed up, and a little cup of frosting and the directions of how to put together this little house. We did it last year as a workshop, but this year, because of health issues, she thought if she made the kits, it would be like a grab and go, so first come, first serve, basically. So Monday the 17th, they'll be available until they're gone. So that should be fun. And that's it for me.
About the last bit about the after-school kids, what is the planning for programs that they do?
We don't really do programming for them. We're just available to help find a book for them or help them on the computer if they need it, or really here and there. We used to do a few little after-school things, but it was when they were younger. It was when the kids were coming over, more like the 5th and 6th graders were coming over from the elementary school. And then we had 45 or sometimes 55 kids here. And we did an art program that ran for 4 weeks that Ned did for us. We also used to hire someone with some of the Manton funds, so they were kind of a roving resource to help them with their homework, or again, help them set up something on the computer. But there's certainly no need for that this year. The group is small. The faces are only about 20 faces, but they're not 20 kids at the same time. They're maybe 8, 10, 12 kids at a time. And then we have one group that comes over once a month that actually talked about, could they use the library? His mom asked, could they use the library for a karaoke night? And I said, oh, I don't know. I'll have to talk to George about that.
Well, technically, the actual answer is yes, they can if they have an adult with them.
Yeah.
Because the Manton room policies, you have to have one adult per 10 kids. But
So they'd need a few parents,
Would be
really.
concerned about the noise. It'd be louder than that.
Yeah, maybe if they, you know,
if it's at night,
Experiment.
Would have to be a night we're open.
yeah.
yeah, a Monday or Thursday, yeah.
We have concerts here, so what's different between having a concert and having karaoke?
Much more entertaining, I would think.
You're on the subject of kids coming over. We never really experienced the influx of kids that we thought we might when the new school opened.
I think that was because the elementary school was shifted back. So it's really interesting because we have middle school kids and high school kids coming over in different waves because they have different release times, and almost no elementary kids coming over except when they're with their parents. So it's been very interesting to see how it's developed.
The other thing to take into consideration is they've hired people for before and after school at the high school to take kids. And I've heard there's a lot of kids go there before school and after school.
The last couple of days have been really interesting to see because they haven't, like Linda was saying, we could get anywhere from 10 to 20 kids, and they do what they need to here. They might stay for a little bit, then they leave. The thing I've been having a lot of fun with is the senior council from the high school has been meeting here. So they've been starting to plan different school events, and it's been fun to see them work.
And is there a school library and a school librarian?
There's a
Yes.
media center. So it's not exactly the same animal as a full bird school library. It's more focused on computer and information access, and then there are some books as well. I'm actually friendly with the media resource center person. We actually went to UMass together. Technically, he's not a full bird librarian, so every now and then we've helped him on a couple different things. He does have
Have you ever been to the library over there?
No, I've not. I've seen pictures. I kind of peeked in a little bit one of the days I was over there, but I didn't go in because it still wasn't open. I didn't want to presume to impose. So they've used us a couple times for different things, and we help teachers a lot with getting books that they just don't have on the shelves over there. They do Westport High has joined the Sales Library Network now, so the teachers don't have to use us necessarily. They can have the book sent straight to the high school now. Some do prefer to come to us instead.
That
but
doesn't count for any of our stuff though, right?
they're a completely separate entity. But if the town ever did cut our funding and we get decertified, the high school library loses certification too. So there's that. Which, being from Wareham,
Exploring all the options.
it's one of those things like, hey, and it just so happens that having a school library in the high school is a feature of having an accredited high school now. So
So are they accredited librarians?
they are. But if we lose certification and the town loses library certification, then the high school library loses certification and the high school stops being an accredited high school.
Oh, boy.
Then would have a problem.
And then state aid.
Just saying. It's a nice thing to have in the back pocket if you ever have to throw it onto a table. So if anybody ever needs that information, there you go.
Okay.
Yes.
Friends update.
Friends update. Friends have been busy little bees. So as of right now, the total between the two book sales before expenses is $14,900 between the paperback and the annual book sale. I did a little bit of math, and in the last 2 years since I started, the Friends have directly donated to the library approximately $53,000 just in the last 2 years, and that's not counting the stuff that they pay for directly on our behalf, like museum passes or programming. They've raised another $4,600 approximately from Lee's receipts, which when you stop and think that that's 1% of the receipts that people have donated from Lee's.
If you look at everybody else, you get the Council on Aging gets them.
Yeah. Well, the thing that just blows my mind is that $4,600 represents $460,000 worth of receipts. When you think, because that's 1%, right? That's how that program works, is they'll donate 1% of the total of the receipts. So $4,600 means $460,000 of receipts.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was close to $1 million when you consider the other.
It's absolutely insane, which that's just the amount of money that actually flows through Lee's. Like, that really blew my mind.
Well, and the prices are ever increasing.
Which is why my motto for got vetoed, because we were very grateful for Lee's for supporting us. Rich, you weren't here yet, so when I was kicking around trying to find a good motto for the library, one of the mottos I came up with that I vetoed out of discretion was Westport Free Public Library. We don't raise our prices during the summer. Which I thought was hilarious, but I had a little angel on my shoulder that was like, but George, how much money does Lee's? And I was like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Quiet.
All right, new business.
I done.
Move along.
Wait, I wasn't done yet. So I was just thinking, it might not, might be a nice thing if the board wrote a nice little letter to the board of directors for the Friends, just saying thank you. I mean, $55,000 in the last 2 years for not a large group of people is a crazy amount of money, especially having gone through COVID and everything. So I think they might appreciate that.
You're saying something to Friends?
Just the board of directors of the Friends, just recognizing how much work they've done for the book sales and all the programming and all of that, because they do a lot, especially with the museum passes and the kids programming. They put a lot of time into coordinating and arranging and staffing those events.
Pauline and I will work on a letter.
And you can give us a list of all the things.
Yeah,
It's
that's
a
a
lot.
good idea.
Yeah, definitely.
If you can send a list, just print it out and send it,
Sure, definitely.
just a list.
And then the other thing that the Friends did, which I was just showing Don before everyone else came in, there was a bequest that was anonymous that went to the Friends to donate to us for $3,000 specifically for fantasy and science fiction books, which I spent, I think it was about 2.5 months working on that book order, putting it all together, finding different titles, going through reviews, and it came in. So there's 216 new science fiction and fantasy books in the back that are going to be added to the shelves. as
For
a
all
result.
ages?
It's adult.
Adult.
Yeah.
Okay.
Total adult, not in.
That was the request,
Uh-huh.
so we honored the wishes
Yeah.
of the.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's all right.
Well,
That's
10,000 last month, 3,000 this month, not bad.
Well, yeah. Well, it was 10,000
Year
last
and a
month.
half, not bad.
And we got another, they just gave us another 10,000.
Oh, they did?
Yep. So that's 10,000 in July or August, and then another 10,000 this month. So just in this last 3 months, they've given us another 20 grand, which is included in that
Do you
50
keep
grand.
track of stuff like that, what they give us? Okay. I mean, I really don't, it's news to me that they give us money like that.
Well, they gave it to the Friends.
No, Friends gave it to us.
Oh, the Friends gave it, the 10,000, the initial 10,000 was a gift to the Friends.
No, the Friends
No.
gave it to him.
The Friends have given us $20,000 so far this year.
But someone gave them a $10,000.
3,000.
3,000.
What was the
3,000.
donation for the furniture that we ordered
That was last year.
last fiscal year?
Yep.
But that was that was a one lump donation to the Friends, that's what I'm saying.
Yep.
And then, did they get another 10,000 donation, or,
They raised money for that.
That was a
Oh,
fundraiser, yeah. So that was
okay.
from the book sales and from the annual membership. And every now and then they do get some other, they've been working on trying to develop other donation streams. So they also, with their website now, there are some people who have recurring donations set up, things like that.
Mhm.
so, so the bequests were 10,000 and then 3,000?
The other one wasn't a bequest, that was just a
Oh,
donation.
just a donation?
Yeah, the 3,000 was a bequest.
And that means with specific information? Thank you.
Although sometimes donations might have specific requests as well, but that one specifically in the decedent's will specified they wanted it spent on
That
science
type of
fiction.
Special
and-
type of thing.
yeah. My understanding is that the person, that was what they liked reading here the most, but they always felt like we didn't have a big collection.
We'll increase that collection over my dead body.
What?
The bequest.
Moving on. Anyways.
Sorry.
It's
New
okay.
business.
Sorry.
It's okay. Jeez. Long-range plan would be the next thing. So we would need to establish the committee, who wants to serve on it, and how that all is going to go.
Is it one committee or is it subcommittees?
It would be up to you. So technically, if it was fully formed of people from the trustees, it would be a subcommittee. If you wanted to include people who were not just on the trustees, then it could be a separate committee. But it would depend on how many members of the trustees are on it, whether or not it still would be considered a public board or not.
I think it might be nice to have other members of the community.
The downside to it would be, it might make it stretch out longer, because then we'd have to approach people and such, and get them, and then coordinate it that way, so.
But you might have people on the committee who will decide to become members of
Could happen.
the board, you know.
Well, I mean, if you look, I mean, there were people who were involved in hiring me that are now members of the board as well. So sometimes having
Right.
other people on boards can be helpful as a
Right,
way to
definitely.
pull people in.
Right.
I've never experienced this before. The trustees always did this as a part of the meeting, which we ran out of time, got put off, and I think that was, not the most practical way to go about it.
I think we would be better off having separate meetings.
Yeah, oh,
I think so too.
absolutely.
I would recommend either way the board decides to go, either as a separate committee or as a subcommittee. If you function as a subcommittee, then we could have separate meetings as well, either way. Trying to get this done in the course of a regular board meeting, I think would, like Polly was saying, it would take forever.
And by the time we got to that part of the evening, everybody was beat.
Yeah. So I think one way or the other one, separate meetings would be necessary.
Yeah,
look at the long-range plan and see if we can break it down into segments, that way we can have ourselves tackle different things.
It already is broken down,
Is it?
yes.
I haven't looked at it yet.
The first, first section is the mission statement, which is really pretty easy. But I think if we had separate meetings, then people could come to the meeting with ideas, rather than just look at it at the end of the night and say, you know what, that's fine. It would be nice to generate some new information and motivation and what.
And when you just have one agenda at a meeting, you can concentrate on that. Here we have a broad range of things that have to be discussed.
So are we saying that we could maybe have a subcommittee on mission statement with one member or two members of the board, or whatever, and invite the public, and then bring that back
No.
to the board?
Not invite the public, but invite certain members of the public.
Well, it depends, because there's no one way to do it. So what you could do is appoint a couple people, or elect a couple people, select a couple people to be a subcommittee for the entire long-range plan. And then one way to do it would be to have them go through all the different, like the other long-range plans we've done, see where we've come from, think about where we might be going, compare it to some other long-range plans that other towns have put together, the material that the Massachusetts Library System and the NBLC has online. Think about all that, and then host a open meeting for everybody in the town to get feedback on the library, how things are, how things could be, where they want us to improve. Then do the survey that we were talking about. You have to have some kind of evaluation. And then pool all of that information together to write or rewrite a long-range plan, either completely throwing out the old one and starting from scratch, or just updating the last one with the new information and new outlooks from different parts of the public and the board, or the sub-board, as it may be. And then all of that, the final step, is that that has to then be voted on and approved by the Board of Trustees as a whole. And whether or not that's just people from the trustees, like was done in the past, or a member or two of the trustees, and a member of staff, and other people from the public. There have been other towns that I've been in where they included even a member of the select board on that committee. But it all depends on how you want to do it.
I really liked her idea of including staff. Because they're
just-
here every day.
It's true.
And it just so happens that Bonnie's doing a class right now on long-range planning.
Really?
Online?
Yeah. So, and as a bonus, the last couple of weeks, Bonnie and I, mostly Bonnie, with some poking from me, has been putting together the largest complete history of the Westport Free Public Library, because we've never had one. Which it's kind of, it's cool.
Is this part of her class?
Part of her class.
Wow,
And then
lucky.
I've already told her we're stealing it to include it with ours when it's done. And obviously, the time of her class should be ending before we're done with this whole process. So whatever she and her classmates come up with, we can add that in as well. So,
Do you know if they have spoken about the best way to go about forming a long-range plan in the class?
not yet, I haven't asked her. But that definitely is something the committee could.
One thing about having a few people from the trustees is that you don't have to post a meeting.
As long as it's less than 3 or less.
Right. 4 is a quorum, so it could be 3. Maybe we need to take a look at some things and think about what we want to do for the next meeting.
I would say yes. Let's each put some thoughts together on how might want to move forward with this. Because I do want to look at some of the other long-range plans you gave us before.
Definitely.
Maybe,
If you wanted to, some of the other towns, Dartmouth, Marion, I'm not sure about New Bedford, but they have lists of the people who served on their long-range committees. Dartmouth typically does have people from other groups too. So I know in the past, they've had, a member of the Friends, a member of the Foundation, a person from the general public, a person from the local business community, and then typically they would try to ask for one of the selectmen for a member of, to have the town have buy-in to the long-range plan as well.
Even as a liaison?
As a liaison. So typically, technically we do have a selectman liaison, I'm not sure.
Do we? Oh, well, I know we do for the finance committee.
Because each of the selectmen actually are assigned different town departments.
Who's ours, do you know?
I think it was, yeah.
I know he was our finance committee guy.
But I'm not 100% on that.
Might be Richard Lewis.
Would you have suggestions of people in the community, or would you bump into?
It's one of those things that sometimes you can use it to pull in, somebody who you want to be more involved or is involved.
I should have an interest.
Or see someone that seems to, be interested in the library?
And then also sometimes they might have somebody included from the schools,
I was gonna just,
Yeah.
obviously.
yeah.
So
That's
either a
true.
teacher or a member of the administration. Yeah, that's a good idea. But that's the thing, is depending how you want to do it, there's no right or wrong way. If you look at, one way to look at it is you can do it with, obviously, the trustees, you all are interested in the library. You can also use it to pull in people who might not be using the library. So if there's an underserved community in town, for example, in Wareham, right when I was leaving, they were actively trying to get more men to serve on the trustees board, or people who were members of minority populations in Onset or other places, from the Cape Verdean population, things like that. People who don't see themselves as actively using the library, why not? What can we do so that you feel comfortable here as well, that this is your library also? For us, the hardest group of people we have to get into the library are the 20 to 55 age bracket. They're in town, but they're busy. They're out of town working. They come back in, they're taking care of the kids, they're tired. It's a whole thing to get to the library. And they are those that use ebooks the most, which is great. We want them to use the ebook collection, but they also use this physical space the least. So maybe somebody from that age group too, see how we could better serve them. But it all depends on how you want to do it. That's
They
the
could
thing.
access the meetings by Zoom,
Yeah, right.
if they can't get a babysitter.
If they can't get a babysitter. And that's the thing, like Polly was saying, the other way to do it is completely fine and right also, with just doing the trustees and going through it that way. Yeah.
I agree, yes, trustees is too limited. And it becomes a chore rather than an interest.
Opportunity.
Why don't we, for the next meeting, let's try to go through some of the other plans and come up with some ideas what we want to do and who we might think could serve on the committees.
Now, even if someone wasn't on the committee, if there were a survey, other trustees might take on the responsibility of summarizing the survey. Could be a part of it, but
They
not
could
have to
do
be at
part
the
of it.
meeting.
They could do
Or,
certain tasks.
yeah, or I definitely would recommend also at least having one kind of like public information session of like gathering the public to have a discussion here at the library about that kind of thing.
I'm thinking Tony Vieira might be interested in something like that. He has kids and, grandkids, and
Yeah.
that might be, and connections.
We might be able to get townspeople who were interested for a year, or say, could you give us 6 months or something like that?
That would be helpful, like definitely having like a timetable planned out of this is what you're committing to. I think we could probably get it all done within 3 to 6 months, depending on everything
And how often you meet.
and how often you meet.
What you have
When-
to do.
When we've had our building committee for the expansion, I was the chair of that, and the first question I asked people was, would you be willing to commit? And it was every Tuesday for how many years, Linda? 3? And one
2 o'clock on
person,
Tuesday afternoon.
yeah, and everybody was here. And one person after at the dedication said to me, you know, I was interested in being on that committee. I said, but you had a conflict. You had a meeting every Tuesday on another committee in town. And that didn't work. We had to have people that were going to be here. And we really were a good group that showed up. And one person who couldn't be here all the time was available by phone at any time. Remember, we used to call, and he would be there by phone. It worked. But yeah, the commitment is a big part of it.
We have a quote before us for $785 to fix the front door. So right now, the doors overlap. So there is a drag where every time someone uses the automatic door opener on the front door, it's catching and pushing and then eventually opening. But that slight snag and push is slowly, ever so slowly, continually breaking the door opener. So last time when it broke and we had to have somebody come out and fix it for the exact same amount of money, it was because the motherboard in the door opener burnt out because of that constant eventual drag. So this would take care of that. And then Roland had noted that the upper plate glass window in my office facing the outside wall, the sealant had gone, so the window was fogging over. So it just so happened the guy who does, I'm told he's the guy for doing the door adjustments. He does plate glass, so he can actually do both. So this is the quote for both of those services. I think from the way he was talking, the door might actually just be thrown into the plate glass quote, because he didn't think it was going to be that much of a problem at all.
You need a motion?
I made the motion to approve the quote for $785.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then Don had a question about preventative maintenance on the doors, the locks, and the closers. There really isn't anything that we do for the doors, the locks, and the closers particularly. Other than I think Roland might sometimes oil them, but that's pretty much it.
It wouldn't hurt to take the covers off once a year or every 6 months to see if there's any metal shavings, if anything wearing out. I don't think there's a lot you can do to it. I don't know if they need any lubrication.
No, they're all self-lubricating. That was the thing. So one of the things we did, if you remember, a couple years ago, Lord help me, last year, was we had some work done and replaced the ones on the inside, because one of them had gone, because the ones on the inside doors were actually original to the building. So the lubricant had completely gone in the left one. So we took care of that. So yeah, other than that, that's it.
Okay. ADA walkway to the amphitheater. Done on,
We have, never mind, the old businesses next.
I asked Joseph, in an email, I asked him if he would be willing to look at it. And he never really committed to it. We'll go back to it. He asked me about bluebird feeders.
Right.
So I've been in contact with Betty Slade, and she gave me the person's name who did the new veterans thing out there at the cemetery, who laid that out, design and laid that out. And I talked to him, and he's willing to come over and take a look at it, design it, and give us an estimate.
That's the ADA walkway.
And that would also, we would have something to present to the Maintenance Foundation to see if they would pay for that.
I did.
But I don't want to ask them until I have a number.
Oh, totally. I do have one other name if we wanted to approach them.
Okay.
This is the Marion Library, where my wife works. They just had that done about 3 or 4 years ago. and I'm not sure which one they did it, because there's two architectural firms that collaborated on it, so I'm not sure who did what component, but one of them also did the Grange. Yeah.
What do they have done there?
Just when they redid the outside of it, they did the architectural design work. Yeah, so if you look right there, in the past, the front of their library was just the front part. It was completely handicapped inaccessible. So they put in that entire sitting area, the courtyard, the garden, and you can't really see it, and I couldn't find any good photos of it, but there's actually an ADA compliant ramp that comes up from the courtyard and around and meets up at the top of the pedestal of the door to go in. Yeah. So I'll send those to you too. That's Dodson and Finkler in collaboration with Churosky 2 Architecture. So I'm not exactly sure how they divided up the work.
They do have an ADA walkway somewhere?
Yeah, that's why I was trying to find like the best photo where you can kind of see it. But on that one, you see that path?
This path,
You turn it upside down, I'm sorry. Yeah.
This path?
So that path right there actually curves around and goes up to the top landing.
looks like it's going up, yeah.
The garden. And the really cool thing about this entire design is there's actually recessed lighting on the underside of that stonework, so it's actually lit at night too.
I think we should go for it. If we're gonna possibly get
Absolutely.
donation, I think it shouldn't be plain concrete, it needs railings and flowers, and I like the lighting.
And that's the thing. So for me, this is cool because it's kind of like one of the unfinished parts of the original renovation plan. Because originally there's supposed to be like a whole thing out
A
there.
courtyard out there.
And I think there should be a walkway from the door down
Yep,
and from the sidewalk down. They should meet,
I agree.
That was Bob
They could
Conley's
meet at
idea.
one point.
so they don't have to come to the library, they go there and use it independently.
I agree.
But is the town gonna pay for that?
No.
We're gonna look at one of our grants.
Negative.
Oh, okay.
Or foundation.
It's a nice thought.
We're gonna appeal to a foundation.
Yeah.
And Betty's pushing to help us with that, so.
And the family is very much attuned to doing things for the town.
The toe jam puppet to individuals that performed said what a wonderful amphitheater that is, that it's a natural amphitheater. They were very impressed.
Yes.
So we got lucky, actually. It's not what we asked for, it's what they gave us, but it's working out okay.
But the thing that really surprised me is that, and like Linda was saying, we accidentally created a speaker because the way that the amphitheater is laid out with the seating on the wall side, the performers face the wall. So the wall is catching the sound and throwing it back. So it's basically created an amphitheater. So it's really cool.
One of Joseph's dreams.
Yeah.
Mm.
We can come up with a word for it, too.
We did.
And that's exactly what it is. So it's really cool to see it working out that way.
I guess we're down to old business now?
Yep. Speaking of the
Library.
amphitheater.
Library amphitheater. We got a request from Joseph to put bluebird boxes along not the wall, not the wooded area, but into the grass area, so.
Along the lower lawn.
Yeah, the lower lawn.
That might be a good project for the spring.
Well, I think we need to talk about it because we
Yeah,
don't
we
need,
can
we
talk
don't need
about
any
it.
more projects that we don't have anybody to take care of.
And they have to mow around them.
Go around and plus they do have to be clean. Joseph said they don't have to be clean, but if you do any
Oh.
research on it, they do have to be clean for the next year's birds.
I took the class at the town farm. There's work involved with the bluebird boxes.
Well, what about Joseph talking about a cultural council grant for the bluebird boxes? What's that?
That's
there's
the
maintenance.
point of the
That would be
request.
somebody paying for it.
Right, so it could be done if he got the grant.
Well, the request is for support from the trustees for him to pursue a grant to get money from the cultural council to build the boxes.
Oh, not to maintain them and clean them and,
The problem I think we have is maintaining.
Do you think one of the scout troops would do that?
Initially, yes.
I mean,
I'm looking more long-term.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not this year
thought
we
the
had a
high school
problem.
kids
And if it
doing
gets damaged, who's going to repair or replace it?
There was one town I worked in, which will remain nameless, but there was a scout troop who started doing flag collection for retiring flags. And then there was a change in leadership in the scout troop, and that kind of tapered off, but nobody remembered to take in the collection bins. So there were just piles of old flags just sitting around waiting for someone to come and deal with them. So it's one of those things that, scout troops can be helpful, but then you have to, it takes work to maintain those connections and maintain the troop to the point where they can keep up with it. Especially with something like that, which it's going to be repetitive.
And I think for the first couple of years, it probably be fine.
The thing is, we don't have the benches even finished yet.
Right.
We don't have that, so I'm hesitant to take on another project here until we have what we want to do finished. When we don't have the walkway there, we still have to fix the benches. I noticed, we voted on it last meeting to move the benches on either end, the ones that are done, but that's not done. And I don't know who is going to do it, but we have all these things that have to be done. And to me, the Bluebird boxes
It's just
could be,
one thing, it's
yeah,
optional.
that's not gonna be half done maybe, or,
Ron, you started commenting about it, and then I answered you, and then in my little ear, I heard George say, "Talk issues over here."
Thank you.
yeah,
They- the public needs.
Yes.
I appreciated that. So I could read that in the email.
Yeah.
Very
Yes.
good. Thank you.
yes, I noticed that you,
Could we table that until the walkway is finished?
We'll put it down in the tabled items.
So-
Put it on the list?
I think so. We have to kind of catch up with what we have planned already.
My
Absolutely.
plan is to get the benches sprayed before the cold weather gets here.
Are we going to move those benches?
Yep. We got into a problem this last month because we got back into that we had to let them dry out. And we finally had rain because the drought finally broke. So we haven't had, 3 or 4 days without rain for the last month. So we haven't been able to spray them.
Give it another week before maybe through.
So, but we are taking those two finished benches and ending them on each end. Okay.
Are the rest gonna look like the two on the end eventually?
Eventually.
Do we have people who are going to do that?
Can we move the benches?
Well,
Move them around?
move them to either end. One is on the end, which is fine, but we need to move the one,
Yeah.
and one that's next to it to the other end.
Moving them, we could do that anytime. That's not a problem. I could probably move that bench by myself if we needed to, but
Let's not cause,
Quiet.
cause a misfunction in your body. I'm not doing it.
The birdhouse.
give me cause for a workman's comp. Come on. just-
Birdhouse, we're gonna table.
Yep.
Update on teak benches, I think we
I
kinda
think we
just did that.
yeah.
And an update on the
Carol.
well. Today, George and I located, because I wasn't sure, where the old well actually was. But there is a steel cover there that shows where it is. I've already talked to Caitlin at Butler and Nice, and I've talked to Chris at the Highway Department. Chris thinks we need to dig a hole, because we need a tank with a pressure switch on, so the well knows when to shut off and on. We don't have it within the room over here. So Chris thinks he could just dig a hole, put a couple cement things in it below the frost line and be done with it, because the power is already there. So, now that we know where that is, I'm gonna get those two people together, so we can look at what we have to do. So we'll get rid of that blue pipe sticking out of the ground,
So it's an ongoing?
ongoing.
Progress is being made.
George, you wanna take
So,
the next one?
internet service migration review. Keith has not been able to give me a definitive number yet for the equipment it would cost to switch it over from the town to the sales internet connection. But the information he gave me would lead me to recommend we don't proceed with this endeavor. Basically, what Keith said was because all of the town computers are on this line, the town would limit the speed on the public computers so that the town computers are not negatively affected, which would actually result in the public computers being cut to 1/8 of the speed they currently have.
Oh, God.
The public are the ones that the public uses.
I know here,
Basically, there'd be a sub-network set up so that those computers could be speed throttled. It already happens with our Wi-Fi, because we actually get our Wi-Fi through the town. But it's capped at about 25 megabits per second. Currently, the public computers have about 200 megabits per second on the sales line, which is the federal definition of high-speed internet.
but we would be the only public computers in the town.
On it, yeah. So because of that, the basic philosophy behind it is that the public use is higher than the staff use because, the staff aren't on YouTube, the staff aren't on Facebook, the staff isn't streaming music on the computers, whereas the public is. So the idea would be that bandwidth use could make it difficult for staff, town staff, or even for the firefighters or the police that are on that line as well. So if we did it, they'd cut the public access speed to the same as the Wi-Fi, so it would be down to 25.
Good to know that.
Yeah, so I
I agree
don't.
with you, with
Yeah.
the table. Or table or just,
I just recommend no further action at this
Okay.
time. Down the road, if it changes so that the speed is even higher, and then if the throttle speed is higher, then maybe we could take a look at it again.
okay. Hotspot.
They were delivered today. So the new hotspots are here. I still have to try and return the old hotspots to T-Mobile, but we don't get any money out of them or anything, so it doesn't really make that much of a, no, they're done.
How many did we get?
Five.
3 or 5?
Five. Which I have to tell you, other than the ARIS report, that is the most paperwork I've ever done in my entire career. It is a 3-step do-si-do that had me swearing at the computer. So thank you so much for having me do that. I appreciated it. But it was crazy because we had to basically we had to purchase a promissory note to purchase 5 of them from a nonprofit vendor that got us a discounted rate. And then we had to turn around and buy them from the company, again, with a discount code from the first place to get the discount rate at the second place. And we got them, and they're here, and it was crazy because like last week we literally had about 12 people calling because everybody,
For hotspots?
because everybody turned off the federal hotspots because the COVID money ran out. So we were getting tons of calls like, hey, do you guys have those hotspots? Got those hotspots? You got the,
We have to give them to anybody that wants them? Or do they have to be a member of the library?
Well, they have to have a library card, yeah. But, yeah, I mean, I don't know technically. Yeah, so as of right now, I bought them because we had to use a credit card. So we haven't actually allocated any funding from anywhere yet in terms of how to pay for them. If we don't use town money, I don't know. I'd have to check with, so technically the way the state regulations are written, regular library services have to be provided to all residents of Massachusetts. Last year, the MBLC changed how they count money so that spending money on hotspots does count as a material expenditure requirement. So that funding can go against our minimum we have to spend every year to maintain our certification. If we do that, I don't know if that means we do or don't, can or can't limit it to just Westport residents. Fall River does. So the hotspots that Fall River had before the COVID money, they limited to only Fall River residents.
People should, right, town residents should benefit.
So the question would be whether or not you wanted people from out of town to be able to check them out as well.
How much are these, how much does each hotspot cost?
I think it worked out to
What's the total?
the total was like $750-ish. I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head.
Seven,
For all 5.
For all 5.
And that includes service for the full year.
500?
It was $750-ish for all 5.
Oh, okay, well, you said 750.
I'm sorry.
So $750
Yes,
is.
$750. So
Okay.
it works out to about, it's $10 per month for internet access, and you have to front pay it to get the discounted rate. So,
I remember that meeting where we decided, Laura ended up making the motion that we should keep it for a while and see how it goes. And we don't really know who's gonna need them.
and we don't. And there are a couple people who were driving over from Fall River to check ours out because Fall River was running out. So whether or not we limited it to just Westport people,
I for one think we shouldn't be subsidizing Fall River.
Now, do we ever have, they can only take them for a certain amount of time?
right now we have it set, they can only check it out for a week at a time. And the rule we have in place is they cannot be renewed.
Oh,
So what we were doing is that when people were returning it after a week, we weren't letting them renew it, but if we had one available, we'd let them check out another one. So,
a week later, wasn't it?
No,
Wasn't it?
yeah, at the same time. So that way, because what we were having is there were some people who were using them regularly, but we wanted to make sure we had one in case somebody came in. So what we did was we'd let you check one out, but you couldn't renew it. So you couldn't keep the same one out for more than 1 week. So if you brought it back in and there was one here not being used, you could check out a different one. That way there would be one here if somebody else came in.
we ever have them on hold? No.
Which that is something that we could change. There were some people who were requesting that if they were going on trips, things like that. I have worked in towns where that was a possibility. And then some people did. I mean, there were people who were going on vacation 2-3 months down the
Right.
road. They try to put a hold in for that so that they would have it on the trip.
Oh, we do that with the museum passes?
Somewhat. Usually it's like the week of. We don't let people book them that far out.
I know that people used to book, say, for February vacation or,
Typically, we try to do it the same week, but it all depends on what the board wants to do and how they want to handle it.
well, we want them to be used.
Yeah, definitely.
Residents of Westport.
So since we did vote on that as a policy, we'd have to amend the policy to restrict it to just Westport residents going forward.
Don't you have, you're a member of SAIL, wouldn't they have to be a member of SAIL?
Well, that would be what you'd have to decide, whether or not you'd want anyone from sales to be able to check them out or just town residents.
But they'd have to have a library card.
One way or the other one, they have to have a library card.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I can check with the MDLC to make sure, but I know Fall River does, so it shouldn't be a problem.
Well, we'd have to look at the policy and open it, right?
Yeah, I'd have to, I'm not sure on the exact wording where we have to
Yeah,
put it in
we'd
the
have to look
policy.
at it. Sure.
And then I'll have a definitive answer by then.
Okay.
Other. Any other?
I got nothing.
Adjourn?
Are we gonna do any of the tabled?
If a member of the board wants to pull one of them up, that's,
I think we should leave them there because we're gonna add one to it, so.
We need a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Laura did first.
Yeah.
She didn't get the words out, but she raised her hand. All in favor?